Hi everyone, and welcome back for the last episode of 2025. This a bit more at the end, but let's focus on what we have to discuss today. And Qasim has an interesting idea on how we're going to do today's episode. So do you want to explain what it is, maybe?
So obviously we're at the end of the year. It's been a great year for politics. It's been a lot of events, a lot of important stuff. So what we've decided to do is, up here we've got a tier list, okay, of significance of these events. So we're going to rank these events here by significance. I will say the events now. So reading from left to right, we've got the rise of AI, the Epstein files.
Epstein wow, all right. Well, what a topic.
Yeah, what a topic. The French petrol crisis, the Gaza peace summit, Pakistan-India war, Charlie Kirk assassination, Zoran Mamdani becoming New York mayor, new leaders across the world, the rise of the Reform and Green Party, the new pope, the budget, Sudanese crisis, Trump-Zelenskyy meeting, that's the Oval one by the way, in February, Trump's tariffs and FIFA World Cup draw. Some of these we've already discussed in episodes, but we'll be rounding up again and we'll be ranking them with these tiers. So the top tier is the highlights of the year, second one is super impactful, third one, significant, fourth one, worth a mention, and the fifth is noise. We have no rules in terms of how many can go in each category, we can put as much as we want. I think that's it. We can just get started then.
Yeah, fine. Should we get down to it then? So what was the first topic? AI, the rise of AI.
The rise of AI.
Well, I think this has obviously been a really key issue in the world, especially over the last 3 years. I think this year we've seen AI has been able to do a lot more tasks, but I think when it comes to the rise of AI, you have to think about what the consequences of that are more than anything. So obviously lots of people are afraid that it can take their jobs. I disagree on this specific count.
Yeah.
Because I feel like AI will take some jobs, yes, but I think the role of AI is more to simplify existing jobs and to replace, the same repeatable tasks with it'll be able to do that itself basically. So that means that humans will be more directed towards more creative fields. You're going to have a lot more individual input rather than having to do the same task over and over again. And in a way, I think that makes jobs for us in the future more exciting. What would you say?
Yeah, I think this has been the breakout year for AI. I think we can see on the internet, we can see all the new things that have been able, for example, a big thing here is making fake videos, deep fakes and stuff like that. There's been loads of that with AI. Obviously the scare of unemployment in the future. I think it's really important. I think AI is going to shape the next 10 years, right? And I think this has been the year where AI has started to grow. So if we look at where we're going to put this, politically though, political impact is different. I think this is going to have more impact economically, but I still think that it's going to be very important because governments have to manage the use of AI for their economies. So I would say, I would put it right in the middle. I'd play significant. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think obviously AI has been very important, especially it was important in 2024. It was important in 2025 and it will continue to be important in the future. I think the most popular one you have Gemini by Google, ChatGPT, which many students, including me, use for assignments. Maybe we should cut that.
Just go.
Maybe we should cut that out.
Good.
If you edit this, please cut it out. But it's incredibly significant. It will continue to be in the future. So I think significant is the right place for it. I agree with that completely.
Okay, let's put AI in significant, please.
Yeah, just watch.
That guy's doing the thing, by the way. Shout out, Kirk.
Next up, we have possibly, one of the most popular topics on the podcast, which is Epstein.
Don't say it like that. We're not like that. Don't worry. But so obviously, the main thing here is Trump's reputation, obviously, because obviously Epstein is dead, and what actually happened with him, we know, right? Trump obviously voted in the Republican Party to release the Epstein files quite recently, actually. He voted in favor of it. He said there's going to be nothing in there that's going to defame him, and nothing in there that's going to destroy his reputation. So that's quite interesting, I think. And I think the 2025 has definitely seen Trump be the most important figure, wouldn't you agree? Most important figure of the year. So this is very important for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to be honest, I think Epstein wasn't reaching the news as much as it was since Trump came back into office. I think Donald Trump knew that if he came back into power, that was one of the main challenges he would face. Like, his connection with Epstein, who's a convicted criminal and a very serious criminal at that. So, and 2025 saw a lot of like an acceleration in interest in that case. In the end, obviously, like you said, he agreed to release the files, which I thought was a very interesting move. And it was just his way of trying to show that he, in criminal ways, is not connected with Epstein at all. He's not afraid, basically. Obviously.
Also, the release should be in actually a few days. So.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, many people are afraid that he may doctor the files, so that when it comes out, he's not liable. Because obviously, he wouldn't release something that says he's guilty. Like, no one does that.
No.
So I think, definitely significant in the grand scheme of things. But I personally would only put it in worth a mention.
Yes, I was going to agree because if I'm going to compare it to AI, I think AI is much more significant. And I think that in terms of global impact, it's going to mostly have an impact on Trump, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
If we're going to look at the global political scheme, I don't think it's got too
And also, Donald Trump has consolidated his power so successfully so far that realistically,
I don't think it's going to have an impact.
Like, in the unlikely case that he releases a file that incriminates himself, like, I don't really see
what's going to happen.
I mean, it would obviously draw a lot of negative attention towards him, and I mean like very, very negative attention. But will it result in him being kicked out of power? No, I don't think so.
He's too much. He's already too powerful.
He's already too powerful. That's why I'm the only president of America.
We'll put the Epstein files in worth a mention. Thank you very much. Cool, it's checking up already. Okay, next one is the French political crisis. Now, this one is something we talked about in our second episode, obviously with Nanda, great episode we had there. I think that this kind of took everyone by surprise. France is one of the biggest economies in the world in terms of size. It's got the G7. It's just like in the past, it's been one of the in the French Empire superpower. But now we've seen Emmanuel Macron at the very end of his reign kind of stumble with his debt crisis. What do you think?
Look, anytime a major country goes through a political turmoil or political instability, such as what we're seeing in France right now, it obviously draws a lot of attention, right? And you can kind of liken it, as I said previously, to what happened in the 1930s in Europe, where many of these, key, powerful countries, they went through periods of change where they turned to more extreme governments, and there was lots of changing leadership, and I can kind of see that happening in France to some extent. Obviously, in that period in 1930 was sparked by events such as the Great Depression, which were, let's say, out of the ordinary. You could not really predict that was going to happen. Same thing with coronavirus in 2020. No, there's no way you could predict that that specific event was going to happen at that specific time. And events like this often lead to political instability, and that's what we're seeing here. The result of the political instability in the 1930s was World War II. The result of this political instability, I don't want to find out.
Yeah, and it hasn't got a clear, outright cause to it there. So, what are we thinking?
I think it's significant. I mean, to be honest, I'd say that
I agree.
While the event itself is not particularly impactful to people outside France, it points towards Europe turning away from their centrist governments.
And it can also have a domino effect on the country.
It can have a domino effect as well. The event itself, if you isolate that event on its own, would be probably worth a mention, right?
Yeah.
But if you put it, with the whole geopolitical landscape, I'd put it more in that significant to super impactful, but I'll let you decide.
I'll agree with significant. Venkat, can we put French political crisis insignificant? Just keep it behind AI, that's fine, yeah. We can do the orders at the end, but for the tiers now, we'll just start with that. Okay, next one, Gaza Peace Summit. So this is obviously one of the biggest wars in the world right now, and this event got a lot of attention because Trump claims to have solved the war in the Middle East, and this event was huge. It had 56 countries coming together to sign and recognize the peace treaty, two-state solution, of course. However, I think I've got an opinion on this, a little bit controversial. So I don't think that this is going to have an impact, as people say. I think already it hasn't had much of an impact. Both sides, Hamas and Israel, have already broken the ceasefire, right? If we want to say, is it a significant ceasefire, then obviously not, because it's already been broken. And with the tendencies of both parties, you could argue that's going to be broken more in the future. I feel like if it was a ceasefire that actually was broken and taken seriously, and if the hostages were released with speed, and prisoners of war as well, I would put it in highlight of the year. However, it hasn't. and I don't think it will. So in my opinion, I'm going to put it in worth a mention. What do you think?
I think that this Israel-Palestine war it didn't just start like a couple of years ago, or it didn't just start last year, right?
Of course, yeah.
It started because ideologically there's issues, isn't there, in that region, and that's been there since the creation of Israel as a country.
Yeah.
Because it was just so abrupt. It was just after the Second World War where it was drawn up.
Yeah.
You can argue that maybe it wasn't done with the full thought and effort, which it could have been. And this is similar to the India-Pakistan situation, where in 1947 these two countries were drawn up, not really much.
Or the British as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I guess so, but I mean, maybe, but not much thought about the long-term security. And that's the same thing that's happened here. This short-term peace solution is, as I said, short-term.
Yeah.
There's no real long-term guarantees for this. So with that, I put it in the worth a mention to the noise category, because I just can't see this lasting, to be honest. And yeah, like you mentioned earlier, it's already been broken in some way or another.
And I think Trump kind of made it bigger than it was as well. He said this is the unsolvable war. Let's be honest, it is unsolvable, and he hasn't solved it. So. I agree. I think worth a mention, and I think we can always adjust it later. But for now, worth a mention.
Yeah, fine.
We'll put the Gaza Peace Summit in worth a mention.
Cool. India-Pakistan war. Okay, well, that's kind of going on what I said earlier. It wasn't actually a war. It was more
skirmish.
A 2-day skirmish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, my opinion on this, right, is that like the Palestine-Israel one, there's no real long-term security guarantee. All it really does is it just showed America attempting again to intervene in foreign politics.
Donald Trump as well.
And Donald Trump claiming that he solved the war. Whether he did or not, I don't think we'll ever actually find out.
And then you have Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan glazing him, right?
But to be honest, he has every right to glaze him, right? Because Pakistan need that alliance with America. They need that strong relationship. And he'll do that in any way he can, whether that be flattering him in public, which is what he attempted to do there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was reading an interesting book recently about the BRIC nations, which is the nations which economists believe will be the next 4 biggest superpowers in the world.
Yeah.
And those are Brazil, Russia, India, China.
Yeah.
And obviously India's in that list. India have got their eye to the future. We debated this earlier on whether India can become a superpower.
Yeah.
I strongly believe they have the capacity to do that because of their incredibly, overwhelmingly large population size. So that really makes this conflict that ever more significant.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the conflict itself, right, it was obviously just basically like an air battle, right? We only had, I think, under 100 deaths in total. But obviously, this is the first major conflict between the two we've seen in quite a while. Just showing the still hostility. I think you can't separate the hostility between these two countries. It will be forever lasting, and it has been since 1947, right? But again, I don't think it's globally significant as some of the other things we have. So I put it in, I don't know, maybe bottom of significant or worth a mention. That's what
I just want to make it clear, there's no hostility. There's no hostility.
I love Dhruv.
Yeah, maybe not. But
thank you.
We'll swiftly move on from that.
Okay.
And Charlie Kirk.
Wow. So this, in my opinion, we're moving to the top tier. Okay, Charlie Kirk, right? This is a huge event. So obviously, he was at Utah University, talking to college, I should say, students, and of course, as he usually is doing, he's debating, and very sadly, he got shot in the neck, and that was a very, very shocking event, very abrupt event. No one saw this coming, right? But Charlie Kirk was on the up, right? I mean, we saw his popularity was rising. He was constantly persuading, college people that I think his main argument was college is a scam, abortion should be illegal, and I think he debated a lot of Israel as well. He was very pro-Israel. I think this is very, very significant. And the reason I think this is because, especially for young people, right, this is someone that many young people looked up to in terms of their politics. To have him removed, right, especially in America, this was an event that really dictated the laws about guns, right? I think it's the Second Amendment, and yeah, that is why this is very important. This is a constitution defining. That's why I think. So what do you think?
I think it's been a year, unfortunately, of political and religious violence, more so than any other year, and that's been caused by like we mentioned, the Israel-Palestine conflict, for example, or just people in specific countries being unhappy with the way things are being governed. Obviously you can take the UK as an example where people are unhappy with migration, which has led to an increased violence against migrants in the UK. And, that's obviously shocking in every way. But yeah, this is really significant because in America there's an idea of political freedom. Whether that exists or does not exist is up for debate.
And the fact that he got shot in this case, you can argue that it's not, right?
Yeah, this goes against the American value of being able to be politically free, say what you want, because, well, the truth is that Charlie Kirk was assassinated because he was talking about what he personally believed in. And that's just it.
Yeah.
So
let's look at this. What do you think? I think it's one of the top two. I think.
Yeah, no, I think so because it sets a precedence for political violence in a country such as America. Obviously, we know political violence is not necessarily unknown in the world. We do see it quite a lot, but we haven't really seen high-profile case assassinations like this in a country like America. So yeah, I definitely put it in that super impactful to the significant category. I'll let you say.
Let's agree on super impactful then for Charlie Kirk assassination. Thank you very much. Next one we have Zoran Mamdani. Obviously, this is Zoran Mamdani obviously winning the. So first he won the Democratic primary in July, and then he won the New York mayor election just a few months ago, or maybe last month actually. So yeah, another one that we've talked about before. First Muslim mayor, first immigrant mayor, first Democratic Socialist mayor in New York, in the biggest city in America, financially, population-wise, etc., etc. However, at the same time, I think how much of an impact can one mayor really have in the world? That's what I would say. I think the reason why it was caught up in the media so much was kind of what I said before, right? All the propaganda aspects of it, right? Defying Donald Trump, backed up against all the billionaires, right, who paid Andrew Cuomo. That's why I think it had so much media attention. And I'm not going to say that it had so much media attention because it was politically significant. Again, it could have a domino effect. If I'm looking at this tier list though, I'd say significant, or maybe worth a mention. I think one of the two.
To be honest, I think what this win for Zoran Mamdani really shows is, the discontent in countries such as America, such as Britain, these Western countries that traditionally been aligned with a form of capitalism in some ways. People believe, and I'm amongst the people to be honest, that socialism just cannot be applied to cities like New York, to cities like London, where capitalism is the basis of it. It's the business city of the world, realistically, in New York, right? So yeah, in this way, I think this is quite significant because Mamdani's coming to power, and the way he's coming to power is through his slogan of reducing the average cost of living,
connecting with the population,
connecting with their core issues. And I think the core issue at the moment in the world, and this has been triggered by many things such as the war, just as numerous different wars, is to reduce the cost of living. And that's what he's promised to do here. So it's quite significant. I'd put it in super impactful.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Because yes, it's a single mayor, and I don't think globally it will make too much of an impact, but it sets precedence that in cities which are more capitalist orientated, socialism can come in and be attempted to be implemented.
Okay, I'll agree with you. Let's put Mamdani in the super impactful, but let's put it below Charlie again. Okay. Okay. So we're moving on to the next one. We have got new leaders across the world. So just a quick summary. We've got obviously Donald Trump started his term this year. You've got a new first female prime minister in Japan. Justin Trudeau finally ended his reign in Canada for 20 years. New Canadian prime minister as well. I think Mark Carney's his name. And we've also got a few in Germany. So this is just the general one. Obviously Trump is the big one, right? The others aren't that significant. I think it's worth a mention to round up this year with the new leaders, but I would say it's probably just noise, to be honest.
Yeah, I think new leaders coming into power it's just change, and I think change in the world is inevitable, isn't it? Obviously, Donald Trump coming in is more significant because of how powerful he is. Being the president of a country like America has a lot of brings a lot of weight with that. So but generally, I put it in noise because it's inevitable in some way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just part of the political cycle. Venkat, can we have new leaders in noise, please? Noise. Bottom one. Okay, next one. Rise of Reform and the Green Party. So this one I think is very interesting. So I think that, first of all, I'm actually quite happy to see the rise of other parties. Because I think that traditionally we always had Conservative, we always had Labour, and Lib Dems somewhat. I think people are starting to open up more about their political. They're not really tied to one party, and I'd like to see political diversity in the UK. However, in the form of obviously more kind of left and right parties, that's a little bit more controversial. But I definitely think it's significant. I definitely think the UK is one of the biggest countries, like politically, in the world, right? And to have the rise of countries on the right and the left side, you can even argue Reform is far right, and you can argue the Greens are far left. I think this is very significant.
Yeah, I think it's very significant. Obviously, in some ways it's good because you have more voting options, which will make a lot of people feel a lot better. And also, you can kind of tell how a party is doing based on how much time they get on shows such as BBC News, ITV.
Question time.
And, you know, these two figures, I don't know how clear it is to you, but that's Zach Polanski and Zia Yusuf.
Yeah.
And they have gotten so much airtime against each other. And it's been a very entertaining watch.
Yeah.
Looking at their policies, they are quite interesting. Obviously, Zach Polanski being more left-leaning, a bit more liberal in some ways, advocating, you know, just legal drugs
Much
all
like
around.
Mamdani, right? Yeah, you got eco-populism.
Eco-populism, a lot of more interesting things. And Reform, their main stance being on tighter borders. You know, obviously, I think Zia Yusuf gave a speech saying that when Farage comes into power, first thing he'll do is he'll tell the Coast Guard just to
block it. Yeah.
Just to block everything.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's interesting. Obviously, I think in a way drawing on the fears of many people in the UK on immigration. You know, immigrants are taking all of our jobs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I think we have a little bit of a slight bias. So obviously, we live in the UK, right? This is going to be very important for us. But I still think that the UK, because it's such an important country in the world, I think it's quite impactful. I would put it in either super impactful or significant. Again, it's a domino effect. In fact, I think this is a result of domino effect.
in fact, I go even further than that. I'd say it's one of the highlights of the year. And you know why? It's because this rise in extreme left, extreme right, isn't just something you see in the UK. It's something you see in countries like Italy, far right leader right now, France, as we talked about earlier, Germany. All of these very major European countries are going through this period of change. And, you know, that's in some ways, it makes things a bit more uncertain. So yeah, I put that highlight of the year because of the significance it has and the potential consequences for the whole world.
No, you have convinced me, to be fair, because we haven't got anything there so far. So yeah, let's put Rise of Reform and Green Party in highlights of the year.
Another thing that's quite interesting is that there was an economist who looked at Reform UK's policies, like economical policies, and his conclusion was that they just don't really make sense.
I don't think they're focused anymore.
But that's the whole point. They're not focused on the economics, and in my opinion, a country that does not have strong economics does not have strong stability, which is why it's a bit concerning in some ways.
100%, I agree. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Pope. So this is obviously important because it's the first American Pope, the first US Pope. That's why we included it here. Obviously, Pope is probably one of the most important currently religious figures. But I think that impact is kind of deteriorated over time. Pope isn't as big as a figure as he was, for example, in the medieval times, in the Tudor times, for example, studying. So I think, it's kind of cool to see a new background on Pope. But I'd say probably one of the more worth a mention.
I think, to be honest, right, the interesting thing is that Pope is from America, and that just shows the rise in American influence in the world, especially in religious matters as well, as we're seeing here. But like the actual impacts and consequences of that are little to none, so I put that in noise. Because it's interesting to see, and it shows a shift in culture in a way, from, you know, like the more European-based popes to like you now having one from America. But the actual consequences of this are limited in some ways.
I'd still say worth a mention though, because I think the religious kind of impact and to preserve religion in its significance is quite important. And I would compare it with new leaders, so that's what I think probably was.
Well, isn't it just a new leader in a way?
Oh, to be fair.
Yeah.
It is a new leader, I guess so. But this is, that's a good point. But then so is Mamdani, so you gotta play that.
But Mamdani's a bit different though, because it's on the political spectrum, isn't it? Yeah. It's a shift in the political spectrum.
This is a shift in the racial spectrum.
While the Pope is more, it's just a figurehead really.
But I still think it's worth a mention.
We can agree to disagree. You can put it in worth a mention though.
Okay, we'll put it in worth a mention.
We'll put it in worth a mention. We'll
put the new Pope in worth a mention. Bottom of worth a mention though. Okay, next one is the budget. Obviously, there's been 2 budgets this year. There's one earlier this year, but we're going to talk about mainly the one that happened in November, the autumn budget. We obviously spent 2 episodes actually talking about this one. I think it's quite significant for the UK, obviously. Obviously, it's changing a lot of economic policies, more taxes than anything we saw. And yeah, what do you think?
I think that the budget is extremely important short term. So obviously discussing it for 2 episodes, right? It's a very current issue that needs to be discussed. If I look at the impacts on the world as a whole in the long term, I'd say they're minimal. Obviously, that Britain is part of the G7.
Yeah.
You know, it is a significant country, and so the budget is important for investors across the world. But yeah, overall, it's not really there's not really politically or economic.
I mean, there's a budget every year, isn't there?
Yeah,
they're going to change more.
Twice a year, so it's not really as significant. So I put it in worth a mention, definitely. If you're an investor outside the UK or a business outside the UK, you would definitely take note of that. But in the whole grand scheme of things, it's not the most significant thing.
Yeah. So Venkat, we're going to put the budget in worth a mention. Let's put it second last in worth a mention. So just in between the Pope and India, Pakistan. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Sudan crisis. Now, obviously, we talked about this one with our episode with Harry Leggett, and this is obviously one of the kind of big media hot topics at the moment. It's finally getting some coverage, which I think it deserves. Obviously, proxy war between 2 militia groups. One is the armed forces of the country, and one are just some Arab militias funded by UAE and Saudi Arabia, which I think is really where the significance comes. Right, this is a proxy war from the Middle East, and that's why we're seeing the Saudi-UAE rivalry kind of coming together. This is the war, along with the Yemeni war, which is where that has actually had the opportunity to put these 2 countries into direct conflict. And obviously, what's going on in Sudan is horrible, right? Horrible humanitarian. What do you think?
I think the Middle East, as we mentioned, it's a bit of a proxy war, and the Middle East right now is, well, I'd say it is one of, if not the most significant and volatile areas in the world, where gaining, if you have influence over that particular region, where there's lots of oil there, if you have influence over that particular region, you have the potential to be a global superpower. So obviously that's kind of what we're seeing here to some extent, which is why you also have countries like America trying to intervene. Obviously they only did that after social media coverage as well, so you can maybe look at it in some other ways. But there's interest for America in intervening in this in order to gain a bit of superiority over their Middle Eastern rivals. But overall it's significant because it's a mass casualty event, which is obviously horrific.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be in the significant.
I think it is quite significant though, and it's definitely worth note. It's definitely worth taking note.
Yeah, we'll put the Sudanese crisis in significant, please. Thank you very much. Next one, we have the Trump-Zelenskyy Oval Office meeting. Now, this was a blockbuster stuff. Obviously, Trump very famously said to Zelenskyy, "You're dealing with World War III." Yeah, that was very important. And this is Donald Trump in its prime. In my opinion, this is where we saw the true emotion of Donald Trump, right? Is he really aligned with everything Western? Because if we had Joe Biden in his position right now, there is no way this meeting would have been anything similar. But he completely doubled down on Ukraine. And this is where we started to see Trump moving more towards Putin's side in probably the biggest war right now. So,
I don't think we should look at this as Trump moving towards Putin's side or Trump moving towards Zelensky's side. I think Trump is doing what he believes will bring an end to the war as quickly as possible. In this case, he got frustrated with Zelensky because it's clear that Zelensky wants to prolong the war, which is fair enough from a Ukrainian perspective.
Well, no, he doesn't want to prolong the war. He wants to end the war.
No,
but he just wants
to limit damage to Ukraine. That's a significant part.
Yeah, obviously he does.
Which is fair enough, obviously being the Ukrainian leader. Yeah. But obviously Trump recognizes that the war going on for as long as it does has severe economical consequences for the whole world. Also, Ukraine and Russia together provide nearly 50% of all of the grain harvest, right?
That's true.
And grain is important in many different ways. So by having the war go on for as long as it is right now, you're hurting the world's food supply. That is obviously not good, which is why Trump...
But if we talk about this meeting specifically, right? We're not talking about the war, we're talking about this meeting.
No, but this meeting shows Trump's motivation of just wanting to end the war, and that's why he told Zelenskyy that he's dealing with World War III. Because in some ways he is. He's kind of... Because, obviously Europe is...
I think that there's definitely some hostility between these two. And I think that was notified in this meeting. And I do actually think that Trump is more on Putin. Trump and Putin are very, very close friends. in comparison to Trump and Zelensky. We saw this later in the meeting they had in October, where they basically just, behind the scenes, completely lashed out at each other. Trump threw the map of the Ukraine region on the floor. So I'm actually going to argue this is highlights of the year. I think this got so much media coverage. This has to be one of the most political. This is the biggest war in the world right now, and these are two of the most renowned leaders in the world fighting each other, and not even just you're dealing with World War III. There was way more. There was so much more. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was so much more.
I think this is not the biggest war necessarily. It's the most well-covered war because of the potential implications.
That's what I meant.
Oh, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But yeah, I'd put it in highlights of the year because it just shows how because with Biden stood firmly with Ukraine
Such
the
a big
whole way.
difference. Yeah.
Trump, I think he just wants to end the war, to be honest. So yeah, I'll put that in highlights of the year.
We'll put Trump and Zelensky meeting in highlights of the year. Cool. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll just get the next one started. Trump's tariffs. Now, this is obviously a bit of a shock that came. He basically said, he came up with this big board, right, and said, like, India, 10%, Africa, South Africa, 5%, all that, right? And he just said the country 7%, and then basically just said some waffle, right? So, but the economic impact of this was quite big. So.
Yeah, so firstly, I want to excuse Qasim's horrific Donald Trump impersonation. I really hope never to see that again. But moving on now to the actual tariffs, I think this is highlights of the year. And because I believe the countries that respond best to this are the countries that will emerge in the next 30 years as the most self-sufficient superpowers of the world, right?
Mm.
And
that's interesting though, because in the middle of the year, he took some of those tariffs back and he changed them a little bit.
That's the thing, because it's also very significant for investors, right? Because investors are so unsure at the moment. Because, obviously the tariffs are kind of volatile, right? Trump just imposes them randomly. So they have a lack of confidence right now. But countries such as like India, for example, may emerge on the other side of these tariffs with, stronger than other counterparts. So, I think this is incredibly significant. So I'd definitely put it in highlights of the year.
I wasn't initially going to put it in super impactful, but you've kind of convinced me. Yeah, the economic impact is very, very important, and we see that there's been loads of trade wars in like the world, with US Canada, US China. So yeah, I'll put it in highlights of the year.
Also, America is one of the biggest markets in the whole world, right? So if someone gets on Trump's wrong side, you can just impose a tariff on them realistically.
Yeah.
We
With
saw
Canada,
that, We saw that with Venezuela as well.
Canada, Venezuela, China.
Venezuela. So you just impose a tariff on them, and that just harms the country. So that's obviously not good.
Yeah.
So yes.
We'll put it in the highlights of the year, please. Last one, we had a little bit of fun here with this one. Both big football fans, we've gone with the FIFA World Cup draw. Politically, obviously, this has not got that big of an impact. We look at all these big wars, big tensions. But obviously, we have Trump and we've got the sports and politics mix. In my opinion, noise, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing was, I was following this on BBC, right? And the BBC guy had enough of this as well. He was just like, oh mate, like when's this gonna end? Hopefully it ends before the start of the World Cup.
Yeah.
To be honest, at some point it really did not look like ending.
Yeah.
It was just a really drawn out, like a ceremony to worship Mexico, America, and Canada. I think it's just noise, to be honest. I mean, like the FIFA Peace Prize, like it's just a Mickey Mouse trophy.
100%.
Like it could be made out of plastic, and no one would really care anymore or less. So yeah, I just put it in noise for this.
Okay, for the end of the tier list, we'll put the FIFA World Cup draw in noise, and that is our completed tier list. So have a look in all its glory. 2025 wrapped in political events with tier list.
Yeah. So I know. Yeah. So it's been a great year, obviously. I know Qasim had his word with like he put like the crown on his head. We're just not going to talk about that. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's watched this podcast in any way, shape, or form. It's obviously grown to be a lot bigger than I thought it would when we started this like 3 months ago. To give like a bit of context, in the last 30 days, we've had on Instagram alone around in the region of 55,000 views across all platforms. That rises to around 80-something thousand to 90,000.
It's been a great year,
and that's within 30 days as well. So it's been great. Just want to thank all the guests as well, everyone who's watched this. And behind us we have Raj and Venkat as well, who turn up every week and really help us out.
Great guys.
Yeah, so it's been great. We look forward to coming back next year. It'll be interesting. And hopefully 2026, politically and economically, is as interesting as it was this year.
100%. 100%. I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you very much as always, Dhruv. We'll see you guys in the new year.